Dr. Marcus Webb stepped off the transport shuttle onto Centauri Prime and immediately regretted every life choice that had led him here. The air smelled like ozone and disappointment, and the welcome committee consisted of exactly nobody. Perfect. Just the kind of warm reception he'd expected from the galaxy's most prestigious medical conference. "Ah, the human has arrived," came a voice that sounded like wind chimes having an argument with a glacier. Dr. Vexthera materialized from what Webb had assumed was a decorative crystal formation. Turns out, that was just how crystalline species looked when they were trying to be intimidating. "We were beginning to wonder if your species had finally developed the sense to stay home." Webb adjusted his name tag, which read Dr. Marcus Webb, Xenobiologist, Earth, like a badge of shame in this crowd. "Well, here I am, ready to disappoint everyone with actual science instead of whatever passes for research out here." The conference hall buzzed with delegates from across the known galaxy. Tentacled beings floated in zero-gravity pods, mechanical entities rolled on precision-engineered wheels, and gaseous lifeforms swirled in containment fields. All of them seemed to be staring at Webb like he was a particularly interesting bacteria sample. Captain Zara Knox appeared at his shoulder, her military bearing somehow making her look relaxed in this chaos. "Playing nice with the locals, I see." "Oh, you know me. Diplomacy is my middle name. Right after, why did I agree to this?" Professor Quilp, a six-legged insectoid researcher, scuttled over with what passed for excitement among his species. "Dr. Webb, fascinating to meet you in person. Your papers on human pain tolerance have been quite controversial in academic circles." "And controversial how?" "Like interesting theory controversial, where this human is clearly making things up controversial." "The latter," Vexthera interjected, her crystal form shifting to what Webb was learning meant smugness. "Your species' claims about pain endurance are, shall we say, dramatically overstated. We've analyzed your data, and the mathematics simply don't support your conclusions." Webb felt that familiar itch between his shoulder blades that meant someone was about to learn why humans had conquered half the galaxy despite being made of meat and bad decisions. "Oh, really? And what exactly makes you think that?" "Simple biology," Vexthera continued, warming to her subject. "Pain is a survival mechanism. Rational species evolved to avoid it efficiently. Your descriptions of humans continuing to function under severe pain suggest either exaggeration or evolutionary failure." The crowd murmured agreement. Webb noticed several delegates placing what looked suspiciously like bets on small electronic devices. Knox leaned closer. "Webb, you've got that look." "What look?" "The look that usually precedes me filing incident reports." Professor Quilp's compound eyes whirred as he focused on Webb. "The prevailing theory is that humans describe minor discomfort in terms that other species reserve for life-threatening trauma. Cultural hyperbole, as it were." "Cultural hyperbole," Webb repeated slowly. "So when a human woman says childbirth hurts, she's just being dramatic?" "Precisely." Vexthera's crystalline structure practically rang with satisfaction. "All mammalian species reproduce. The process cannot possibly be as traumatic as human accounts suggest, or no species would survive to the second generation." Webb looked around the room at beings who had clearly never stubbed a toe on furniture at 3 a.m. "You know what? I think there might be a fundamental misunderstanding here about what humans consider normal." "Indeed," Vexthera agreed. "Your normal appears to be our extraordinary." "Funny thing about that," Webb said, his smile taking on an edge that made Knox quietly step back. "I think we should test that theory." Dr. Vexthera's crystal form shifted into what Webb was beginning to recognize as the universal body language for "you just said something incredibly stupid." "Test? What manner of test could possibly prove your outlandish claims?" Webb gestured to the assembled delegates. "Well, you've all got these fancy medical scanners and neural interface technology. Surely someone here has invented a way to, I don't know, share sensory experiences between species?" Professor Quilp's antennae twitched nervously. "Well, there is the Empathic Pain Simulator 3000. It's primarily used for medical training, allowing practitioners to understand patient experiences across species barriers." "Perfect." Webb clapped his hands together, causing several gaseous delegates to ripple in what might have been alarm. Let's run a little experiment. You can experience what humans call minor discomfort, and I'll experience what you folks consider unbearable agony. We'll see who's being dramatic. The conference hall fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the distant sound of Nox muttering what sounded like prayers to various Earth deities. Vexthara's form brightened, literally. You're proposing we subject ourselves to human-level pain stimulation? Just the everyday stuff. Nothing fancy. I'm talking about the kind of pain humans experience on a Tuesday and then go to work anyway. This is fascinating from a research perspective, Quilp chittered, his excitement overriding his nervousness. The EPS 3000 can calibrate cross-species neural patterns with 97% accuracy. We could finally settle this debate scientifically. Webb, Knox said quietly, are you absolutely sure about this? Because I've seen you stub your toe on the coffee table, and your reaction didn't exactly scream minor discomfort. That's because coffee tables are clearly a conspiracy by furniture manufacturers to test human pain tolerance, Webb replied. Then louder, but yes, I'm sure. Are you up for it, Dr. Vexthara? Or is the crystalline species all sparkle and no substance? If Vexthara had possessed a face capable of expression, she would have been glaring. Instead, her entire structure pulsed with indignant light. I have withstood the crushing pressures of stellar formation and the absolute zero of deep space. I hardly think the complaints of a mammalian nervous system will prove challenging. The crowd pressed closer as Quilp scuttled away to fetch the equipment. Webb noticed the betting had intensified, with most delegates apparently wagering on how quickly he would break under alien-level pain stimulation. The EPS 3000 requires precise calibration, Quilp announced as he returned with a device that looked like a love child between a medical scanner and a torture device. We'll need to establish baseline neural patterns for both species before we can begin cross-referencing pain responses. Technical details, Professor. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Webb settled into what looked like a dental chair designed by someone who had never seen teeth. Just make sure we start small. Wouldn't want to accidentally prove my point too dramatically. Knox shook her head. I'm going to enjoy writing this report. Human xenobiologist challenges entire galactic medical community to pain tolerance contest. The details at 11. Have a little faith, Captain. What's the worst that could happen? In my experience, when you say that, the worst thing that could happen is usually exactly what happens. Vexthara settled into the adjacent apparatus, her crystal form adapting to the chair's configuration with liquid grace. I propose we begin with pain levels that would incapacitate a human, then work our way down to your so-called minor discomfort. It will be more efficient to establish the vast gulf between our species' pain tolerances immediately. Actually, Webb said, watching Quilp make final adjustments to the machine, let's start with human minor discomfort and work our way up. I'd hate for this to end too quickly. Your confidence is either admirable or delusional, Vexthara noted. I suspect we'll know which within the next few minutes. The EPS 3000 hummed to life, sensors extending toward both subjects. Webb felt a slight tingling as the machine mapped his nervous system, probably wondering how something so haphazardly constructed had managed to survive long enough to evolve opposable thumbs. Calibration complete, Quilp announced. Shall we begin with standard human discomfort level 1? Let's do this thing, Webb said, settling back in his chair. It's time to find out who's been lying about their pain tolerance. Beginning simulation now, Professor Quilp announced, his compound eyes reflecting the soft glow of the EP's 3000 status lights. Dr. Vexthara, you'll be experiencing human pain response level 1. This corresponds to what humans describe as stubbing their toe on furniture. Webb settled back to watch the show. Fair warning, this is the kind of thing that happens to humans approximately 3 times per week. Usually at 3 in the morning when we're trying to navigate our own homes in the dark. A minor inconvenience, Vexthara replied, her crystalline structure radiating confidence. My species has endured pressures that would liquefy your bones. I hardly think a mammalian pain response will. The simulation activated. Vexthara's crystal form exploded into a constellation of fractal light, each facet suddenly blazing like a miniature star. The sound she made could best be described as a church bell having a nervous breakdown. Her carefully maintained structure collapsed into a pile of twitching, sparkling fragments. "Oh," Webb said mildly. "That's interesting." Impossible. Vexthara somehow managed to communicate through what appeared to be involuntary light Morse code. Inconceivable. What manner of torture is this? "That's Tuesday morning in a human household," Webb replied. "But hey, maybe that was just a calibration error. Let's try something even milder. How about a paper cut?" "Webb," Knox warned, "she looks like she's about to achieve nuclear fusion." "Dr. Vexthara," Quilp chittered nervously, "perhaps we should pause for recalibration." "No," Vexthara managed to pull herself back into a roughly humanoid shape, though several pieces kept falling off. "Continue. This is clearly a malfunction in your primitive equipment." "Paper cut it is," Webb said cheerfully. "Professor, dial up human discomfort level 0.5. This is the kind of pain humans experience when handling office supplies incorrectly." The simulation shifted. Vexthara immediately collapsed again, this time emitting a sound like wind chimes being fed through a wood chipper. Her crystal structure began developing stress fractures that spread across her surface like lightning. "Fascinating," Webb observed. "You know, humans usually just say ow and reach for a band-aid at this point." By now, a crowd had gathered. Delegates from across the galaxy pressed closer, their various sensory organs focused on the writhing crystal being. The betting devices were working overtime. "Perhaps," Webb continued conversationally, "we should try something really mild. Professor, what's the setting for brain freeze? You know, that thing humans experience when they consume cold beverages too quickly?" "Webb, stop," Knox said, though she was clearly fighting not to smile. "You're going to give her a complex." "Level 0.2, Quilp reported, his voice barely audible above Vexthara's crystalline anguish. "This corresponds to rapid consumption of frozen human beverages." "Go for it." The simulation updated. Vexthara's entire structure went rigid, then began vibrating at a frequency that made the nearby equipment hum in sympathy. She managed to form what might have been words. How do your offspring survive childhood?" "Well," Webb said thoughtfully, "they mostly learn not to drink milkshakes too fast. Usually takes getting brain freeze 2 or 3 times before they figure it out. Kids are resilient that way." A tentacled delegate in the crowd made a sound like a deflating bagpipe. "Surely this cannot be accurate. Young mammals experiencing this level of trauma regularly?" "Oh, that's nothing. Wait until you hear about Lego blocks." "What," Vexthara managed to ask between crystalline convulsions, "is a Lego block?" Webb's grin was absolutely predatory. "Professor, do you have a setting for stepping on small, sharp objects while barefoot? It's a rite of passage for human children and adults, and basically anyone who has ever owned building blocks." "This is getting cruel," Knox observed, though she made no move to stop him. "Level 0.8, Quilp reported. Sharp pressure point contact with unprotected human feet." "Fire it up." The simulation activated and Vexthara simply shattered. Not metaphorically, her crystal structure actually broke apart into roughly cube-shaped fragments that scattered across the floor, each piece glowing with individual agony. "And that," Webb announced to the stunned assembly, "is why humans invented shoes. Also carpet. And generally not leaving tiny sharp objects scattered around our living spaces." He paused. "Well, mostly not leaving them scattered around." From the floor came a sound like someone torturing a wind chime with a tuning fork. The individual crystal fragments were somehow managing to spell out words. Impossible, evolutionary, nightmare. "The remarkable thing," Webb continued, now fully in lecture mode, "is that human children experience this exact pain roughly once per month, or say a few words that disappoint their parents, and then continue playing. Because stepping on Lego blocks is just Tuesday for a human child." The assembled delegates stared at the fragments of their former conference leader, then at Webb, then at each other. The betting devices had gone completely silent. So, Webb said brightly, who wants to go next? The silence stretched until Ambassador Globnari, a tentacled being floating in a mobility pod, rippled forward. This is clearly some form of elaborate deception. No species could function with such a dysfunctional pain response system. That's the spirit, Webb said. Who's next? I volunteer, Globnari announced, his tentacles writhing with determination. My species evolved in the crushing depths of oceanic trenches. We are intimately familiar with pressure, cold, and discomfort. Excellent. Professor, can we get another chair set up? And maybe a dustpan for Dr. Vexthara? Quilt nervously began adjusting the equipment while Knox swept the still twitching crystal fragments into a containment field. From within the field came occasional flashes of light that might have been crystalline obscenities. What form of torture shall you inflict upon me? Globnari asked, settling his pod next to the EPS 3000. Torture? Oh, we're not doing torture. We're doing normal human experiences. Let's try something uniquely mammalian: menstrual cramps. About day 2 of the average human female's monthly cycle. Knox nearly choked. Webb, you absolute monster. What? It's a normal biological function. Half of humanity deals with this regularly and still goes to work, raises children, and runs civilizations. How bad could it be? Globnari's tentacles stopped writhing. Monthly? This occurs monthly? Every 28 days or so, for roughly 40 years of a human female's life. Sometimes while they're also dealing with jobs, families, and stepping on Lego blocks. Begin the simulation, Globnari declared. I shall prove that humanity exaggerates there. The APS 3000 activated. Globnari's tentacles immediately tied themselves into complex knots. His pod began spinning wildly as he lost all motor control. The sound he made resembled a whale learning to opera sing while being stung by jellyfish. Oh good, Webb observed. That's about a level 4 on the human menstrual pain scale. Level 10 is when they call in sick to work. Sometimes. Make it stop, Globnari wailed, his tentacles now somehow braided into what appeared to be a macrame plant holder. The agony is beyond comprehension. That's what we call Tuesday for about 50% of humanity, Webb replied cheerfully. But wait, there's more. Sometimes humans experience this while also having headaches. Professor, can we add a mild tension headache to the simulation? Webb, Knox said. I think he's learned his lesson. But we're just getting to the fun part. A tension headache is what humans get when they've been staring at screens too long, or listening to their supervisors explain why the deadline moved up by 3 weeks. The simulation updated. Globnari's mobility pod began executing what appeared to be an interpretive dance of despair, spinning and diving in patterns that defied physics. Impossible. He managed to communicate through bioelectric pulses. No species could survive such torment. And yet, Webb noted, human females regularly deal with exactly this while raising children, running corporations, and wondering why their male colleagues are so impressed when they work through a minor cold. A mechanical delegate rolled forward on precision-engineered wheels. I am Unit Mech-Tel of the Robotic Collective. Our species experiences no pain as we are purely mechanical. Surely this simulation cannot affect our cognitive matrices. Oh, this should be interesting, Webb said. Professor, can the EPS 3000 simulate neurological discomfort in artificial intelligence systems? Theoretically, yes, we can create equivalent processing errors and system conflicts that would approximate pain responses in mechanical consciousness. Perfect. Let's give our metal friend here a nice migraine. The kind humans get when they've been in fluorescent-lit offices for too long while listening to meetings that could have been emails. Initiating simulation, Quilp reported. Mech-Tel's optical sensors immediately began flashing in patterns that looked suspiciously like a mechanical seizure. His wheel systems locked up, and his speakers began emitting a sound like a dial-up modem having an existential crisis. Error, 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 he broadcast. Cognitive process is severely compromised. Shutting down non-essential systems. That's just a mild headache, Webb said conversationally. The kind humans cure with over-the-counter medication and caffeinated beverages. Sometimes we don't even mention it to other people because it's so common. Impossible. System shutdown imminent. But wait, Webb continued. Sometimes humans have to deal with headaches while also experiencing food poisoning. You know, that thing that happens when we eat something that's gone slightly off. No, Knox said firmly. Webb, that's enough. You're going to accidentally commit genocide. A gaseous delegate named Whifflon swirled closer in his containment field. My species has no solid form to damage. Surely we would be immune to these phantom pains. Well, when you put it that way, Webb said, Professor, can we simulate the human experience of food poisoning in a gaseous being? Webb, Knox warned. Just a mild case. The kind humans get from questionable sushi and then spend the evening regretting their life choices. The simulation activated. Whifflon's gaseous form immediately began losing cohesion, parts of his consciousness dispersing outside his containment field before being hastily sucked back in by emergency systems. I cannot maintain molecular integrity, he managed to whisper through his speakers. How do humans continue to exist while experiencing this? Oh, we just lie on the bathroom floor for a while. Promise various deities we'll never eat gas station sushi again. And then usually feel better by morning, Webb explained. Though sometimes we still go to work the next day because we've used up all our sick leave on actual emergencies. The conference hall had gone completely silent except for the sounds of various delegates experiencing system failures, existential crises, and what appeared to be several mechanical nervous breakdowns. Webb looked around at the chaos he'd created with nothing more than everyday human experiences. So, who's ready for the advanced course? Captain Knox stepped forward, her military bearing somehow conveying both amusement and concern. Webb, I think you've made your point. Maybe we should. Actually, she paused, a slow smile spreading across her face. You know what? I've got an idea. These folks want to understand human pain tolerance. Let's show them the real deal. Webb raised an eyebrow. Knox, that look on your face is making me nervous. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted galactic life forms, Knox announced to the assembly of delegates who were still recovering from witnessing their colleague's complete breakdown over minor human discomforts. My colleague here has been showing you what we consider everyday inconveniences. But there's one human experience that puts all of those to shame. Oh no, Webb said, suddenly understanding where this was going. Childbirth, Knox continued. The miracle of human reproduction. The process by which our species has managed to populate an entire planet despite having arguably the most inefficient reproductive system in the known galaxy. A hush fell over the assembled delegates. Even the ones who were still technically having system failures paused their error messages to listen. Dr. Vex Thara, who had mostly reconstituted herself but was still missing several crystal fragments, managed to pulse a question. Surely the reproductive process cannot be worse than the torments you have already demonstrated? Oh, sweet summer crystalline being, Knox replied. Labor can last anywhere from a few hours to over 24 hours. And the pain? Well, Webb's been giving you level 1 through 4 on the human pain scale. Childbirth is generally considered to be somewhere around a 9 or 10. That's impossible, wheezed Globnari, who was still trying to untangle his tentacles. No species could survive reproduction at those pain levels. And yet, Webb said, beginning to see where Knox was going with this, humans not only survive it, they often voluntarily do it multiple times. Some even describe the experience as beautiful. I volunteer, declared Ambassador Thexlar, a dignified reptilian delegate who had been silent until now. My species lays eggs. A simple, efficient process. I refuse to believe that mammalian reproduction could be significantly more challenging. Count me in, added Unit Mechtel, his system still glitching slightly from the migraine simulation. If human females can endure this while maintaining cognitive function, surely a mechanical consciousness can analyze the experience objectively. I too shall volunteer, Vex Thera announced, her crystal structure brightening with determination. Perhaps understanding this ultimate human experience will explain their species' bizarre relationship with pain. Soon, nearly every delegate in the conference hall had volunteered. The betting devices were working overtime as odds were calculated for which species would break first. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Quilp asked nervously, his antennae twitching, as he recalibrated the EPS 3000 for multiple simultaneous users. "The simulation parameters for human childbirth are extensive." "We'll start with early labor," Knox said reasonably. "Nice and gentle. This is the part where human women often go about their normal daily activities for hours before heading to the hospital." "Early labor," Webb repeated. "That's when contractions are still manageable and spaced apart. Human women frequently cook dinner, take care of other children, and sometimes even go to work during this phase." The assembled delegates settled into their various apparatus configurations. The EPS 3000 hummed as it calculated the neural mapping required for this unprecedented multi-species simulation. "Beginning early labor simulation," Quilp announced. "This represents human pain level 6, occurring at regular intervals." The simulation activated. The result was immediate and catastrophic. Thexlar's dignified reptilian composure cracked instantly, as he began making sounds that could only be described as existential screaming. Unit Mechtel's optical displays started cycling through every error message in his programming simultaneously. Vexthara shattered again, this time into even smaller fragments that somehow managed to achieve individual consciousness and began filing separate complaints about the pain. "This is early labor," Knox announced calmly over the chaos. "Human women experience this for hours, sometimes while driving themselves to the hospital." "Impossible," broadcast every delegate simultaneously through their various communication methods. "But wait," Webb added, "sometimes there are complications. Back labor, for instance, where the baby is positioned incorrectly and creates additional pressure." "Don't you dare," Knox warned, but she was grinning. "Professor, can we add back labor to the simulation?" "Webb, they're already having collective nervous breakdowns." "Early labor with back labor," Webb continued remorselessly. "This is what human women sometimes experience for 12 to 20 hours straight." The simulation updated. The sound that arose from the assembled delegates defied description. Several gaseous beings lost molecular cohesion entirely. The mechanical delegates began shutting down non-essential systems so rapidly that their emergency protocols couldn't keep up. The organic species had begun making sounds that their translators simply gave up on, displaying only untranslatable agony on their readouts. "Now imagine," Knox said, raising her voice over the cacophony, "that after hours of this, the real work begins. The actual delivery process." "Knox," Webb said, "I think we might have broken them." "Active labor," Knox continued ruthlessly. "Pain level 9 to 10, with contractions every 2 to 3 minutes, each lasting 60 to 90 seconds. Mercy somehow managed to emerge from the collective noise of system failures and existential crisis. Transition phase," Knox added. "This is where human women often report that they've changed their minds about having children and would like to stop now." The emergency medical systems throughout the conference hall activated simultaneously as delegate after delegate suffered complete cognitive breakdown. Containment fields sparked, life support systems overloaded, and at least 3 different species appeared to be attempting to evolve beyond the need for consciousness entirely. "And then," Webb said, unable to resist, "there's the actual moment of birth." He never got to finish that sentence, because every single delegate in the conference hall simultaneously achieved some form of voluntary unconsciousness, system shutdown, or temporary dispersal of their essential being. In the sudden silence, Webb and Knox looked around at the aftermath of what could only be described as the most successful scientific demonstration in galactic history. "Well," Webb said finally, "I think we've made our point." 3 days later, the Galactic Medical Conference had been reorganized as the first ever interspecies crisis counseling symposium. Delegates were still arriving via medical transport, many requiring extensive therapy to process what they had experienced. Dr. Marcus Webb sat in what had formerly been the main conference hall, now converted to a trauma recovery center. Around him, various galactic species were slowly coming to terms with their new understanding of human biology. Dr. Vex Thera had been painstakingly reconstructed, though she now insisted on maintaining a smaller, less imposing crystal structure. "Dr. Webb," she said, her voice carrying a humility that hadn't been there before, "I owe you a formal apology." "You don't need to." "No, I do." Her crystalline form dimmed respectfully. "My species has spent millennia believing we understood pain, suffering, and endurance. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong." Ambassador Globnari floated nearby, his tentacles now permanently arranged in what appeared to be a respectful bow. "We have drafted a formal petition to the Galactic Council. Amity is to be reclassified from emerging species to impossible biological anomaly." "That seems a bit dramatic," Webb said, though he was fighting not to smile. "Dramatic?" Unit Mechtel rolled forward, his optical sensors still occasionally flickering with what his species had termed residual processing trauma. "Dr. Webb, my entire civilization has had to rewrite our understanding of consciousness and suffering. We are currently debating whether pain tolerance of this magnitude indicates evolution or divine intervention." Professor Quilp scuttled over, carrying what appeared to be a formal document. "The Galactic Medical Association has voted unanimously to establish the Human Endurance Research Institute. We're hoping you'll agree to serve as director." "Director of what exactly?" "Research into how your species continues to function despite living in a constant state of what we now understand to be excruciating agony," Quilp explained. "Also, we need someone to develop pain management protocols for the rest of us, because apparently what we considered maximum tolerable discomfort wouldn't even register to a human toddler." Captain Knox appeared at Webb's shoulder, carrying a data pad and wearing the expression of someone who had been answering very strange questions for the past 72 hours. "The military wants to know if we can bottle whatever makes humans resistant to pain and distribute it to our allies." "Knox, we're not resistant to pain. We just deal with it." "That's what makes it so terrifying," Vex Thera interjected. "Your species experiences agony that would destroy us, and your response is to take over the counter-medication and continue with your daily activities." "Sometimes we don't even take medication," Webb pointed out. "Sometimes we just complain about it to our friends and keep going." The assembled delegates made various sounds of horror and disbelief. "Which brings me to our next request," Quilp continued. "We need you to compile a comprehensive guide to human pain experiences for research purposes, and also so we can issue appropriate warnings to species considering interaction with humanity." "A warning guide?" "Approaching humans. What to expect when they casually mention feeling unwell," Globnari supplied. "The preliminary title needs work, but the concept is sound." Webb looked around at the collection of traumatized galactic delegates, all of whom were staring at him with a mixture of respect, terror, and complete bewilderment. "You know, when I agreed to attend this conference, I was expecting to present some research and maybe attend a few boring lectures. Instead, you've revolutionized our understanding of consciousness, pain, and the fundamental nature of existence," Vex Thera noted. "Also, several species are currently undergoing theological crises trying to understand what kind of universe would create beings like humans." "It gets worse," Knox added cheerfully. "I mentioned that humans also voluntarily engage in activities that cause pain for recreational purposes." "What?" came from approximately 17 different species simultaneously. "Sports," Knox continued. "Exercise. Some humans pay money to have other humans cause them controlled pain in gymnasiums. They call it working out." "This is getting ridiculous," Webb said. "Next you'll be telling them about martial arts." "What?" Quilp asked with the tone of someone who absolutely did not want to know the answer. "Are martial arts?" "Human recreational fighting," Knox explained. "They practice hitting each other, develop techniques for causing maximum efficiency pain, and award rank based on skill level." The sound that arose from the assembled delegates suggested that several species were reconsidering their place in the cosmic order. "There's also competitive eating," Webb added, "because apparently today was the day he broke the galaxy's understanding of rational behavior. Humans sometimes see who can consume the largest quantities of food, often while experiencing significant discomfort." And contact sports, Knox continued, where humans deliberately collide with each other at high velocities for entertainment. And extreme sports, where they... Stop, Vexthera managed to pulse. Please. My species cannot process any more information about voluntary human suffering. Webb settled back in his chair, looking out at the collection of beings who had gone from condescending to humans to being actively terrified of their pain tolerance. So, about that research institute position. Do I get a good health plan? Dr. Webb, Quilp said seriously. After what we've learned about human medical needs, your entire species is going to receive the most comprehensive healthcare coverage in galactic history. We're frankly amazed you've survived this long without professional psychological support. Wait until you hear about human teenagers, Knox said. Knox, I think we've traumatized them enough for one day. Human adolescents, Knox continued relentlessly, voluntarily experience emotional pain that would hospitalize most species, consider it a normal part of development, and somehow emerge as functional adults. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of various species' life support systems working overtime. Webb stood up, straightening his conference badge that still read Dr. Marcus Webb, Xenobiologist, Earth, though he suspected that by tomorrow it would read something more like Dr. Marcus Webb, Director of Impossible Biology, Human Endurance Research Institute. Well, he said to the room full of traumatized galactic delegates, I should probably call home and let my wife know I'll be staying a bit longer than planned. Your wife, Vexthera said weakly. Does she know about your experience here? Oh, she'll get a kick out of this. She's the one who went through childbirth. Twice. Said it wasn't that bad the second time around. The collective sound of horror from the assembled delegates followed Webb as he walked toward the exit, already composing the most interesting phone call of his life. Behind him he could hear Knox explaining to someone about human dental procedures, and he decided that was a conversation he definitely didn't need to be part of. Some things, he reflected, were too cruel even for him.